Hey everyone, welcome back to GIMME Growth. Today we're here with Kai Fortney from Hired. Kai has an impressive background in marketing. His career started at Branch Out, the super fast growing career website, and then he was actually the first hire at Hired, that's kind of a tongue twister to say, on the marketing team. I'm ranging all the way up now to being the senior director of marketing programs. So you definitely say that Kai has seen it all, but also been in the weeds during that entire transition and has a lot to teach. So feel super thrilled to have you here. Thanks for taking the time. I'll let you you take it away, Kai.
Awesome. Thanks, Dominic.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Again, thanks for having me, Dominic. I'm super psyched to be giving this presentation. A lot of my colleagues and peers in the industry have been using or working with Dominic and GIMME Growth. So flattered to be here. Today we're going to be talking about email marketing, something that I'm really passionate about. It's not my full-time responsibility as a programs leader, but it's something that I think every early startup, every mid-stage startup should be thinking about pretty heavily. So I'm going to walk you through some of my philosophies, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. And if you guys ever want to reach out, just reach out to Dominic or email me, and I'll be happy to field some questions. So let's get started here. All right, guys. Email marketing 101. I call this milk for startups. What do I mean by this? I think email is one of the fundamentals to growing a healthy, strong startup. It's part of your infrastructure. It's part of your revenue mechanism. It's part of how you communicate with your customers and how people perceive your brand. And what I think it's actually how fundamental and how quickly you can become successful in your startup or business. I run through the presentation in a pretty simple format, the who, what, and why on a few different areas. So let's jump in. First, who am I? I would say that I, started using the internet and using some computers right when I was really young. My best friend was AOL Instant Messenger, just online all the time. My parents basically had to kick me off the computer. After high school, I went into an economics and psychology program at college. The economics piece is really how I got interested in startups, and the psychology piece is really how I've become really interested in email and how businesses and companies communicate with their users. Moving into startups right after college, I moved to San Francisco, was able to work on a few small teams, have worked for a few different companies. When I first moved to San Francisco, I was working for a company called Adderactive. I sent over 1 billion emails. The hack there was we would buy IP blocks and different domains and then pass spam filters to basically send spam and solicit people to buy very cheesy things like ICE or weight loss products, subscription products like Netflix. And that was all about getting email addresses, using this hack to inbox the emails, and then manage the lists to generate revenue. In 2009, I joined superfan.com. We basically were able to get about 1 million users in 2.5 months with Facebook ads. When the user would click an ad, we would prompt them to enter their email address, and then we were able to email partial pieces of their address books. The key there was sending the email from the user, including their face, making sure that the call to action in the email was above the fold. And that viral mechanism really enabled us to leverage email for viral growth. Branch Out, kind of the same thing here. It was more of a Facebook app that allowed us to email users via Facebook, via an app, and then the app would do the same thing, use a very specific call to action through notification from Facebook and get users to invite people back to the application, allowing us to serve about 30 million users job listings that were listed on the internet with paired with their friend graph. In 2013, I joined Hired about 3.5 years ago. We've scaled that business to over $50 million in revenue in a very short amount of time. Some of the hacks there, I'm using a LinkedIn bot to crawl LinkedIn, and when LinkedIn would email who's viewed your profile, we had Hired right in front and center there, and then also using an offshore data team to collect prospects on the B2B and B2C side, and then using cold email to bring them in and give them an introduction to the business via email. So you can kind of see this is all top of funnel, mid-funnel growth stuff that we can use email to build businesses. Why do I like email? Email is old school. It was one of the first things that started the internet. It's something that has grown businesses for since the beginning of the internet and allowed people to communicate with each other. I like it because it's not the sexy marketing growth channel that people build buzzwords around, but I think it's somewhat overlooked. And as I kind of showed you before, it is a multi-purpose tool. It can be used for a lot of different things, and when leveraged correctly, it works well. In my opinion, email's back. It's powerful. It's effective. There's a lot of tools in the marketplace that allow you to email on drip campaigns, on cadences, on email triggers, and it doesn't take a lot of time to set up, but it's something that will pay returns while you're working on other channels. So it's really great to get this set up early in your business. Addicted audience. People have their cell phones out. It's the first and last thing they look at. In psychology, that's called the primacy and recency effect. You're checking your email in the morning, you're checking it in the middle of the day, you're checking it at night. It's people's primary communication method. People are going paperless. They have email for phone. They have their email for phone that they use to communicate with friends, to communicate with businesses, to communicate with retailers, to communicate with service providers. And again, it's accessible 24/7. So it's a very, very effective channel that has users on it all the time. Email, I think it's the most effective lever you have to move through users through any funnel and get them to do what you want. What that means is that you can use email to bring a user to a site. You can get them to move from a middle of the funnel to a purchasing event. You can ask them anything, whether it's complete a profile, whether it's buy something, whether it's give feedback. It's really a tool that has unlimited possibilities, and it's really up to you to just ask what you want people to do. So again, the who, what, why framework, email fundamentals. I think the first key to email is segmentation. Email is all about knowing your audience. This means that every time if you want to send an email and you're about to ask a pool of people to do something, you really need to know who you're writing to and who you're writing from. Who you're writing to could be a set of age. It could be a relationship that they have with your app, or your product. So if you've acquired people through a certain channel, you can speak to them about coming from that channel. If they have a certain familiarity with how they've learned about you, whether it's from press or whether it's from a social channel or from a referral, use that relationship to speak to them. The user type. Your product should have some main user types, whether it's a tech buyer, whether it's a mom, whether it's an older person that has a problem that you're trying to solve, or even a young person. If you know the user state, or if you know the user type of your audience, you can speak to them and identify who you're writing to. And then who you're writing from is very important in order to communicate the way either a person would or a brand would. The user state, another important factor in segmentation, whether your email address is a cold lead, whether they requested more information on a lead form, whether they're ready to buy, whether they've bought before and you're asking them to do something next. This is really important to know where they are in your funnel, so you can speak to it and give them a very clear ask of what to do next. Needs and wants. These are basically signals that users can be providing you, whether it's a page visit, whether it's requesting more information, or whether they've been inactive. These signals can also help you communicate to your user on what you want them to do. by just thinking about what they are signaling to you as their next step. So for every email, you have a what, and the what is what you want them to do, or your call to action. The way I set up this is we talked about the who before. You know who you're sending the email from, whether it's the brand or a person. What the person can be a sales representative, it can be a founder, it can be anybody at your company that is relevant to speak to your customer. The next step is really setting up a consistent subject line. It's clear, it sets the tone, and it's no surprises. People like to create vague subject lines that increase your open rates, but when you have people opening an email for no reason because they've been tricked into opening it, your click-through rates are not going to be affected, and it's also going to create a negative experience for people getting emails from your brand or who you sent from. So subject line is really the first line for you to establish trust with the recipient of the email. And by establishing this trust with effective subject lines, people are opening your emails with confidence that they're going to get something they want. Once you can establish that, people are going to regularly and more often open your emails, and that will increase your click-through rates and it'll increase traffic to your site. Basic rule of thumb is you should be able to tell what you want the user to do in 1 minute. Use concise copy, get straight to the point. People are moving through their inboxes quickly. They want to hear what you have to say. Once they've opened it, you've clearly already convinced them that your subject line is important to them, and just tell them what you want them to do in a very short and concise way. Next up, clear call to action with a relevant landing. Whether it's fill out your profile or buy now or give us another shot. The call to action just reinforces what you've asked them to do within the copy. This is a couple words, and the landing page should be very, very relevant. Extremely simple. It's almost keep the acronym keep it simple stupid is extremely relevant to email. Don't overthink it. Why? This is really what you're explaining within every email. What is the value prop that you're offering? Why should they take action? As we stated, we've identified the segmentation of who you're sending to. You should know what the user wants. What you're telling them with a call to action should be solving their problem. Give them an urgency, limited time offer to get them to know that they've already opened the email. Now it's time for them to click. This is the entire why people are getting emails, why they're opening them, and why they're clicking. And that's the key to success here. How to get the who, what, why of email done. This is really 4 different things. Identifying your business case, whether you are trying to get people to come to your site for the first time, you would be using cold email. Whether you're trying to get users back from either a drop-off point, trying to get them to take another purchase, this would be a nurture email. Whether if maybe they've taken an action on your site and you want to send them a transactional email saying, here's what you've done, this is your next step. Anytime you have a need to communicate, you need to identify the business case and what you want them to do and why you're emailing them. The purpose can range from acquisition, marketing automation, which is really your nurture emails, or a transactional email, which would come from your email service provider, or an in-house ESP. Mailgun is great for that. SendGrid's great for that. Smaller companies can use Marketos or HubSpots for transactional emails on events. But purpose-driven email is the key. Tools. You have standalone tools like MailChimp, which basically allow you to run all of your email services, upload your lists, identify your segmentations, write your copy, design the emails, send, track the deliverability, and track the performance of those emails within a standalone tool. A marketing automation solution, HubSpot, Pardo, Acton, Marketo. These are a little bit more robust. You'll be able to do more complex marketing automation triggers by sending some events or using their APIs to send custom fields, custom pieces of information, and create dynamic content with those emails from your site. This is a little bit more in depth, but something that is not hard to do. These tools are subscription based, can range from $100 to $500 a month. And once you set them up and once you get your strategies in place, you can set it and forget it and move on to the next thing. Another reason this is really important to set up earlier in your business, it'll help you move all of your top of funnel through in a consistent manner. And the longer you're getting the data on your deliverability, on your send, on your actions, and your performance, you can identify places to make optimizations. Transactional email on your ESP, you're going to use SendGrid, Mailgun, Customer Autopilot. Those are going to be the infrastructure for a medium-sized business or up to large. These are going to cost more. You want to really use these for email strategies that have a low deliverability risk. So as you can see, I've kind of run through each how, the business case, purpose, tools, and deliverability. And if you look on the row basis, you kind of have things that you're going to use, cold strategies you want cold email for are going to have a higher deliverability risk. So you're not going to want to use your HubSpot or Marketo or your app ESP for things that have a high deliverability risk. Maybe you're getting email lists from trade shows or scraping or building them yourself or buying them. These are going to be things that have a lower deliverability score. The risk is a lot higher. You're going to be putting the promotions folder quicker on Gmail. You're going to go to spam on other email providers. You want to use standalone tools for your high deliverability risk activities, and you want to use your ESP tools for low deliverability risk activities. So the next step on how you want to really build a holistic view of your user flow. Map your funnel from start to finish, and at every stage that you map, it can be a simple mapping from three different stages within your buying cycle to 10. You have people that don't know about you that you're emailing, people that have signed up but haven't taken the first step, people that need to come back based on inactivity. But at each of these stages, you want to know who you're talking to, what they want to do next, and why you're emailing them. And that goes back to the who, what, why of the email principles that I presented earlier. For each of your stages at the user flow, you want to define your your next conversion event. This means that each of your emails within that user state will speak to getting to the next conversion event. If you know what's next, you can put it in the email so the user knows what's next, and they will come and take action. This is where each segment you'll label and nurture an email accordingly. People that are familiar with your brand, you can be a little bit less aggressive with. People that are new, you have to act quickly and email them a little bit more aggressively in order to bring them in and get them to take that next action. Again, keep it simple. People don't need to know the whole story. They just want to know what to do next. I see a lot of companies sending these long narrative storytelling emails. That's great for extremely engaged users, people that are loyal to your brand that you have great retention with. But that's a different strategy than getting them to come do what you want to take the next step. They've already interacted with your brand. If they already know who you are, you don't need to tell that story. You just need to tell them, come do this. Tracking. I've always found event tracking to be the most simple to set up and the most ideal for triggering emails. You can set this up as page visits with a pixel. You can set this up with internal user states on certain activity triggers. But email that reacts to user behaviors will be delivered at the time you want them to, with the frequency that you want. And it's also very relevant as if the user is interacting with your site. Linear user states are okay if you're driving people through a purchase. So if they've gotten to the sign up page, and they give you your email address and they're on the first page of your website and they drop off, you can speak to them. Hey, come do this next thing, where they dropped off, what they want, what you want them to do next, and so forth from the first to the last step. The problem here is that if they go back in the series of user states and you have a linear system set up, you'll trigger emails that are things they've already gotten. So back to using event tracking, is setting up events in your app that link back to the user states and your emails fire on events. I mentioned token or cookie tracking. This is a popular method with certain marketing automation systems where if you place a pixel or a token on your site and a user that is cookied will go to your site and go to this page, you can trigger an email or put them into a flow. This is very effective for ease of use. But again, if people come back to your site and hit that same cookie and you're triggering the same emails, it will become repetitive. And it's easier to set up the event tracking in Foresight than get cookie tracking perfect. UTM tracking, building an email system off UTM tracking, it works really well if you have first touch set up with UTMs. But when you start building second touch UTM tracking, your emails can get really messy. So I would stay away from triggering emails off of UTM tracking, and just something that I've seen in the past. Some of the tricks that I've noticed, on the how page, founders write great copy, marketers refine it. So if you're a founder, if you have a close relationship with your founder, ask them questions about who they're trying to communicate to. Ask them questions about how they want users to take next steps. You can take that and whittle it down and make it very effective. But just a tip. Plain text emails and subject name matters. For transactional emails, you can send from a sales rep, you can send from anybody in your business, even from the marketer. Making a plain text email from a person can actually increase your open rates and click-through rates. All emails don't have to be a branded template. And also test the subject name. I've found unique female names to work better for open rates versus kind of standard male names. Think of email as a give to get. If you're building trust with your user, you have to be honest. You have to give them the information in the email that you want them to take. As you're building this trust, you're going to get higher open rates. You're going to get higher click-through rates. So don't use click to trick. Don't tell a user one thing in an email and land them on a second page. Because once you start losing that trust, your brand is really going to suffer from its email effectiveness. Frequency is your friend. Sending people an email in the morning and then a quick follow-up at night, which could be a branded template in the morning, and then hey, did you see this, from a plain text or a very simple email in high frequency, you can do. You can send them a lot of emails in the first 3 days versus spreading them out every other day. Testing frequency is a really effective way to find an in with people. I've even seen people send one email and then send a second follow-up 20 minutes later. And the second follow-up is just a very human, hey, did you see this? I wanted to share. And that can trigger I did see this and I didn't do it. Thanks for following up, and I'll do it right now. Timing. If you know who your audience is and when they're online, if you're sending to a full-time professional who is at their desk 9 to 5, they're going to be on email at that time and not at 9:30 p.m. And they're going to be putting, if they're middle-aged, they're going to be watching TV or putting their kids to bed or out. If you're talking to a student, good night emails are very effective because they're up later and usually in work mode at this time. So knowing who you're sending to, timing can be extremely important and very, very valuable. Another little trick, you can put a URL in your email and append the person's email address to that URL, and it looks like it's a unique URL designed just for them. You can pitch that. This is your unique link, only for you. Please do not share it. And it's an effective way to get people to click it because they think that you're actually sending them something personalized. Make sure that your CTA is mentioned multiple times in your email. It's not just what your button is called. It's mentioned in the body of your copy. It's mentioned in your subject line. This way, people are reading from top to bottom and they know what your message is. A lot of emails don't have consistent call to actions, and people don't know what they are asked to go do. It's very important to keep your call to action consistent and to mention it multiple times. This is something that I always do with my emails, and I encourage other people to do it. After you write an email, think about who you're sending it to. Think about what it says. Read it, and think about it in your inbox. Would you read this? Would you click it? If you wouldn't click the email, rework it. It's pretty simple. It's a great way to look at if this will be effective or not. And I think it's just something that you can do really easily 15 minutes after you build an email and rethink if this is the approach you want to take. In my opinion, great emails, they're heartfelt, they're human, they're honest, they're relatable. They evoke emotion to get a reply. And you can tell this by having a high click-through rate. Being really honest, this is one of the emails that we've used for Hired. Hey, it's another recruitment email. The target audience for Hired in the early days before we expanded to marketing and sales users was developers in the San Francisco Bay Area. These people get a lot of recruitment emails, and when you see yet another recruitment email, it's, oh, that's kind of funny. At least they're being honest with me. That's building trust. Evoking some emotion. One of the things we did here is, you're probably not looking for a new job because you're happy with your current role. If that's true, wonderful. Then we're right and the user can move on. If we're wrong, we've evoked emotion to make them click through and see the next step. The humor, getting somebody to smile at your email. 2 examples here. Maybe your browser crashed or your grandma called. Those 2 things, we know they didn't happen, but they're 2 things that could give an excuse on why you didn't take the next step or why you dropped off from the site. That can make you smile or it can make you mad. People have written back and said, I lost my grandma a year ago, but it still evokes emotion and it gets them to engage with the brand. Using some GIFs, you have the guy with the boombox from Say Anything. The subject line for that was, "We want you back." The female illustration on the right, when she taps the keyboard, a rainbow comes shooting out and she goes flying. That was to say how great the user experience is for Hired. So come try us out. Getting people to notice your emails, getting them to smile, getting them to get happy or angry will get them to click. Some caveats there. Bad emails uses guilt or begs. I get a lot of these. They say, "Hey, I know you're really busy. I'd love 15 minutes of your time." That isn't heartfelt. It doesn't get any emotion. And it's not going to get me to click. Using guilt as well. A lot of SaaS companies are trying to use guilt as a mechanism. It just easily deletable. Again, asking for time. This goes against the philosophy of give to get, which I mentioned in one of the last slides. if you're not giving the user value, you're not going to get a response or their time. Give information, give statistics, give testimonials, give freebies, give discounts, give anything to the user that when they're opening is valuable, and you'll get their time in return. We talked about being deceptive a little bit. If you're deceptive once or twice or 3 times, you're going to get your open rates are going to be decreased. Your trust with your brand and from your sender are going to decrease, and it'll just overall it's a short-term gain for a very big long-term loss. So I highly discourage you from using deceptive email tactics when you're talking to your users. Some people who are good at email, creative market, and the reason I mentioned who's good at email, you can go sign up for different websites and create a fake email address to just get their emails. See how people are talking. And when you're getting these emails, know how they're using the who, what, why framework to get people to do what they want. These companies all use the CTA multiple times in their body, subject line, and buttons. They land you on a relevant experience. For example, Creative Market, they have they sell digital goods to designers and other design professionals. They have a great cadence. Every Monday, you'll get a sale email. Every Wednesday, you're going to get a what's new email. And people engage with these because it creates excitement on when you're going to get it, and their cadence is just really, really good. Influitive, a great SaaS company that is running extremely well-written nurture programs to their audiences. I highly suggest you fill out a lead form, sign up for a free trial, and you'll see some great B2B copy coming from SDRs, coming from their brand, their events marketing teams, and it really has a solid strategy behind it. West Elm, a retail outlet, they use frequency, and they use timing, and they use consistent call to actions, an extremely effective flash sale for flash sales and to get people back to the site. 3 different companies doing 3 different things, but all using the same philosophies that we've kind of covered here. So 3 things about email. You'll set up emails, you'll do your segmentation. There's a thing called the fear. This is the anxiety before sending. Every email marketer knows it. Anybody writing an email, sending it to 1,000, 10,000, 1 million people, once you press the send button, there's no coming back. If your email has an error in one of the tokens, say your first name token, or your link is broken, or your subject line has a placeholder, everybody gets the fear, and one way to mitigate that is to schedule your sends. You know when you want to send it, you know who you're sending to, just schedule them a half an hour ahead of time, walk away from your desk, and then come back and check it. This will give you the ability to just cancel that send if you find an error. Email fail. Again, everybody who sends email will screw something up at some point. Know that. Get over it. You will maybe put the wrong landing page on a big email blast. Maybe you'll forget to include, maybe you'll put from the wrong sender. Maybe you'll send a Valentine's Day email on Labor Day. When you screw up, just realize that it happened. And when it does happen, you can either act quick or don't do anything at all. And with that, if you've noticed that you've made a mistake, you can follow up really quickly and say, hey, we've made a mistake. Here's the right link. You can follow up really quickly and say, here's the right link. And since we screwed up, we're going to add an offer. Some campaigns that I've run doing that, calling out your mistake, making it, taking accountability for it, and then adding an offer actually has been very, very successful for me in just being honest, creating that response, creating a little bit of a human element behind the brand and the email between the recipient of the email. And that's kind of the last line there. Be honest, be funny, give an offer, either whether it's a time or a discount. And those are, 3 things that you can do just to be a little bit more confident in what you're doing with email. To sum things up, I think email is a strategic and a complex beast. It's not going to be right the first time, but I think it is fundamental to deal velocity and revenue. Knowing the frequency strategy, knowing who you're sending to, clear call to actions, all of this stuff. If you think about it, if you apply it early in your business, it can have a big impact throughout the funnel. I'm happy to answer any questions, Dominic, but that is kind of all of it.
Yeah, that's great. It's a very thorough presentation. Thank you. Cool. All right. Awesome. So one of the problems that I've had with email, and I imagine a lot of early stage founders have too, is your purpose when you think about like what you want to get is to get them to buy or to sign up or to do something like that, right? And you can only send so many emails that say buy now, right? So how do you guys go about finding other things, other calls to action, other topics that may be interesting to a specific segment or persona?
Yeah. So I think the first strategy here is to understand what the persona wants and does, and then just provide relevant email content. Whether it's data around your business, whether it's data around an industry, whether it's thought leadership, you can use webinars, you can use blogs, you can even send content that isn't yours around in a newsletter type fashion. But holding your buy now or take next action to a better frequency, whether it's every 2 emails, whether it's 3 emails, what you really want to do is establish the rapport with the brand or the sender with things that aren't just one call to action. So think about what your user wants to see and hear and talk about, and give them the ability to do so. I've seen a lot of B2B businesses in the Bay Area now doing nurture emails through event invites. This is event invites that are fun. They can be at ping pong tables, ping pong studios. They can invite people to movies. This is kind of creating a fun user experience that puts the people from your business in the same room as the email recipient, and isn't a call to action of come do something for me, but it's come get something for free, and we're going to ask you to do something for us later. That's kind of the give to get strategy that I mentioned earlier. But I totally agree. You can't ask them to do one thing all the time. And just switching it up is part of the key.
Okay, cool. I guess one follow on to that is how do you kind of know, or how do you sense when you're sending too many emails or when you're not sending enough?
You're sending too many emails when your unsubscribe rates are increasing. Okay. You can see your unsubscribe rates over time. Your later stage emails. So if you have a series of emails that are 3 emails or 5 emails or 7 emails, and your 7th email has a 2% unsubscribe rate, and your 6th email has a 2% unsubscribe rate, or 1%, if that big jump happens email to email, then that latter email is the one that's really causing you, is in the wrong place or isn't valuable at all. But if you're sending too few, you could easily see that if your unsubscribe rates aren't increasing. If your later stage emails have a higher click-through rate than your early stage emails, you could add more emails until your click-through rates start to diminish when your unsubscribe rates start to increase.
Cool. I like that. That's great. I've usually broken drips down into 3 types. Tell me if you think this is right or if you have any extras. There's the drips that are for people who are not yet a customer. So like leads, have not yet made a purchase. Yep. And the goal of that is to get them to the purchase. There's the people who have made their first purchase and are now technically customers, and the goal is to get them to remain customers, right?
Yep.
And then there's like your win back campaigns for those people who have not yet, who have kind of like separated from the pack.
Yeah.
Would you break customers down into those 3 journeys, or would you have some extra ones in there?
Yeah, I mean, it does depend a lot on what your business is selling and what you want the user to do. So sometimes win-backs aren't applicable at all for all businesses.
Yeah.
I think that there's for retail, you call it like abandoned shopping cart, or you call it for like a B2C product, it would be like incomplete profile or not set up. I think that your pre-user, which is your lead state, your purchased, and your buy and your win back, I think you could add something in the middle there for your drop-offs. I think that's a state that you definitely need to be thinking about. And yeah, I think the most important state there is your pre-customer, which is your nurture and your early stage emails to get people to come into the app. Because once they come in, there's a likelihood that they'll buy right away. And then you have your signed up or lead email that is has not buy, which is your nurture stage. And getting them to purchase or take the last event you want them to take is the second most important step. Your win back is something that I would be thinking about a little bit later, because you're going to want a lot of top of funnel growth faster than you're going to want win back growth. Yep. And the win back stuff is incremental, because once you've created a user experience that you can get customers in the door for a cost per acquisition, and you can get them to take the action, the buy of the life cycle, you will get natural retention through your product since they've already experienced it and gotten value. So the win back is actually a lot smaller opportunity that people focus on. That people focus on it naturally earlier, but I think it's something you can focus on a little bit later, because you're already going to get natural retention through people that have a great experience.
Got it. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep. That makes perfect sense.
And I do think that until you can get your top of funnel email nailed down, and that's really the first thing you should be working towards, getting people to sign up for the product, getting people to come back to the product via email, and getting that set up is definitely the first step. Yeah.
So early emails first, of course. That makes sense. Do you ever move people out of lists who haven't opened emails in a certain number of times or stuff like that? Like, in terms of list quality, keeping it healthy?
So the best way I see that is non-openers and clickers. People that open emails, you can segment into another campaign. People that open and click emails, you can segment into a third campaign. Your third campaign will have the most email series. So say you send one email, you have a pool of people in one drip campaign. The people who open and click can be moved to stage 3 and be emailed more frequently. The people who just open can be moved to stage 2 and be emailed a few more times. The people who don't do either, are not opening or clicking your emails, you can keep into your original campaign, but make it short, and then change your strategy. So for all the people that remain in your first campaign, try sending from a different sender, try sending with a different message, and do so 30 days later. So it's a new message, it's a new experience, and they might come back, open and click. But it's definitely a signal that you don't have the right pieces in place for that pool.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. And then I guess on that note, what would you consider some benchmarks, if possible, for healthy email lists? Like, what do you usually like to target for open rates and click rates and stuff like that?
I would say between a 40 and 70% open rate is basically the benchmark between good and great. If you're getting 40 to 50% open rates, your subject lines are telling users a relevant subject, and your brand they recognize, or the sender they want to engage with. The click rate on a healthy email means that the body copy and the call to action is relevant for the segment that you've sent to. A good click-through rate would be anywhere between 7 and 14%. That's a good click-through. A great click-through can be upwards of 20% click-through. But that click-through also really depends on your subject line and the timing, the frequency, the segmentation, the better you can understand the user, who you're talking to and what they want and what the call to action is, the higher those click-through rates are going to be. Smaller, better segmented emails with high click-through rates are going to be a lot better for your brand and a lot more effective than high volume, low open, low click-through. From a brand loyalty perspective, from a deliverability perspective. So it's worth putting in the extra time for proper segmentation up front and also great subject lines and great body copy.
Okay, I like that. Yeah. What about unsubscribe rates? I usually try and keep those below like 1%.
Yeah, between 0.02 and 1% is kind of your unsubscribe rate range. If you go above that, you're really pushing it. You want to have an unsubscribe link in all of your emails before they've opted in. Transactional emails and emails that have users have signed up for the TOS don't require an unsub. The best way I think to a little bit more complex of a method, but the best way to keep your unsub rates and your email deliverability up is to create a unsubscribe panel where people can unsubscribe from certain emails versus global unsub. This way, if somebody unsubscribes from the email that you send on Mondays, they can still get your Wednesday email. It's going to be a bigger project to get that set up, but the sooner you build it, the more you'll be able to communicate with your early customers.
Yep. Luckily, a lot of tools come with that somewhat out of the box now, like autopilot and stuff like that.
Yep.
So what are your thoughts about on-site email collection? Any good strategies there as to like how to get people to actually opt in and like give their email in the first place? I mean, I know that's a tough one because there's not like, it's different for every business. Like it's basically like a lead magnet strategy, but I'm just curious if you specifically have had any wins there.
Well, I mean, I think that there's two things. One is make your first step as simple as possible. Okay. You can collect an email without requiring somebody to create a password for your service or product. And you're going to have some drop off on that second step, but you're going to collect 100% of the emails of people who are willing to put in emails on the first step. Yep. That is kind of your optimization strategy of, less friction, less steps, less fields. But I've seen a lot of people or a lot of companies move to that one email field first step and then use email nurturing to get them to the second, through the third, through the fourth. If they didn't make it naturally. I think that's a strategy that people are gravitating to. A lot of B2B companies use the, get free information for the email address, sign up with your email to get, any sort of lead magnet, any sort of content, any sort of registration. I think those are all tried and true. I don't think that there's any silver bullet for it right now that I know of.
No, definitely not. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that the reducing the friction definitely makes a lot of sense too. Like start the conversation as early as possible.
Yeah.
Last question. Any famous email fuck ups that are on the wall of fame that not necessarily yours, but just like some of your favorite ones you've ever seen? I was trying to think of some. I couldn't really think of any.
I mean, I wouldn't say there's any really good famous ones, but you see them all the time.
Yeah.
I'd say if you're thinking about email, and in the presentation I suggested that you sign up for just businesses that are similar to yours, businesses that you respect, businesses that are doing email well, and looking at their emails and looking for their mistakes, looking for inconsistencies, looking for bad subject lines or typos or links that don't work will make you a better email marketer. There's a lot of bad email out there, and just thinking every time you open an email, thinking about, is this solving a need? Is this being concise? Is this effective? If you're thinking about it 30 seconds every time you open an email, you'll get a lot better at it quickly. Yep. But as for famous fuck-ups, I'd say no, but fuck-ups happen all the time. I see them all the time.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to remember too, that just like don't get discouraged if you mess up. Just react quickly. Yep.
It happens.
Okay, cool.
React quickly or don't react at all. Because a lot of people won't notice, right? If you're sending to 10,000 people and you have a 50% open rate, only 50% of those people are going to see the fuck up. And if you follow up, only follow up to the people who open the email, right? You don't need to call out your fuck up to everybody and not, well, everybody might not have noticed it.
Yeah.
Right? And also, I think in the not so distant past, we sent an email out to, 120 extremely targeted people. It had an error in it, but only 60% of people opened the email, and I think only 20% of people saw the error. So don't freak out when 20 out of 120 or 20% of people actually notice it. Life goes on. Remain under the philosophy of move fast, break things, don't get discouraged. It's better to have loved and lost than to never loved at all. And I think that's very applicable to email too.
A little philosophy lesson here. Okay, great. Cool. Well, hey, I'm going to end the recording. I'm going to say goodbye to you, okay? But
Sounds good.
Thank you so much for doing this.
Of
really
course.
Great presentation.
Later, man.